Hi friends, welcome to our YouTube channel Civil with Sudhir. So ಇವತ್ತಿನ ವಿಡಿಯೋ ಆಲ್ರೆಡಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಪ್ರೀವಿಯಸ್ ಇಯರ್ ಕ್ಲಾಸಲ್ಲಿ KPSC WRD AE 2020 ಎಕ್ಸಾಮ್ಸ್ ಇದೆ ಬರೀ 2 ಡೇಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ. ಸೊ 2017 ಏನಿದೆ ಅದರದ್ದು ಕ್ವಶನ್ ಪೇಪರ್ ಸೊಲ್ಯೂಷನ್ ನಾನು ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು 25 ಕ್ವಶನ್ ಆಲ್ರೆಡಿ ಕಂಪ್ಲೀಟ್ ಆಗಿದೆ. If you not visited or if you not watched our first video, in the I button I have given the link. You can watch our first video. This is a part 2 video, and in this video we are going to discuss the next questions, that is the next part of WRD Assistant Engineer 2017 full paper solution from question 26 to 50. Right, so these are our some social platforms you can join. This is our Telegram channel. Wait. So this is our Telegram channel Civil with Sudhir. Link is in the description box. You can join the our Telegram channel, and this is our Facebook page KPSC Civil AE Study Point, and this is our YouTube channel Civil with Sudhir. Make sure you have click on the subscribe button and as well as the bell icon to get the all the latest notification from our YouTube channel. Okay, let's begin with the today's first question. That is a question number 26. Two footings, one circular. Right, let me write. This is a geotech question. First of all, we have to understand in from which subject this one are geotechnical engineering. So two footings, one circular and other is square, are founded on the surface of a purely cohesion-less soil. Cohesion-less soil is C0. The diameter of the circular footing is same as that of the side of the square footing. Diameter is same as that of the side. So the ratio of their ultimate bearing capacity is, ultimate bearing capacity they are asking. Let me tell you, first of all understand. So they are telling that there are two different footings. One is square, one is circular. So for the square footing, we know the ultimate bearing capacity is given by, this is a formula, 1.3 into CNC plus gamma into depth of foundation into NQ plus 0.4 gamma BNR. So this is a formula. So this is for the square. This is for the square, and for the circular one, ultimate bearing capacity is 1.3 CNC gamma depth of foundation into NQ 0.3 into gamma BN. Now for the calculation, so these are the important formulas. But in the question what they have given, you can see in the question what they have given. So the side of this what square footing is the diameter, right? So let me tell you. So the given side is equal to diameter of the circle. So cohesionless is, you know, that is the C is 0. So foundation is laid on the ground surface, for example, right? So this is the ground surface, this is the ground level. So the foundation they will place on here, they are assuming like this. So depth of foundation is 0. So the ultimate bearing capacity of circular footing, they are first calculating the ultimate bearing capacity of the circular, because they have given they have given two different foundation, one is circular, one is square. What we have to do, we have to first calculate separately, and you have to make a ratio of these two, that is circular and the square. Okay, so now we are doing that one only in this process. So the Q is equal to, that is when we have depth of foundation is 0, it will become equation is like this, 0.3 into gamma into B into NR. For the square footing, again the depth of foundation, when we say, that is the equation 1 and 2 we will get. When we make the equation, that is a 0.3 by 0.4, this one, right? The 1 and 2, if you equating 1 and 2 at ratio, you will get 3 by 4. And important point from this question, you have to remember these formulas. These are the two formulas you have to remember. So the answer for the given question is what? The 3 by 4 is the answer for the given question. Okay, let's move to the next question. Next question. In a tree, the cambium layer is situated between. So this is building material and construction. Building material and construction subject question. So let me tell you. So what do you mean by the cambium layer? First of all, if you want to understand the cambium layer, first you have to understand the What is the cross section of the tree? This is the cross section of the tree. Okay, let me tell you, at the center point, at the middle point or innermost point, we can say that is an pith, right? So we can see the first one, it is the innermost part of the tree, consists of cell or tissues which are used for the nourishment of the tree for the young age. First point. Second one, sapwood. You can see there is a sapwood here. There is a layers like this, right? Like this. There are the different layers. But sapwood is an outer annual rings between the heartwood and cambium layer. You can see the heartwood just nearby the pith, right? So nearby the pith area we call it as that is an heartwood. Yeah, this portion you can see heartwood. This portion I will draw here like this, right? You can see. So this portion, only a little portion, we call it as that is an heartwood. So from heartwood and cambium layer, where is the cambium layer? You can see this is the cambium layer. Cambium layer is having that is the moisture content, right? This is one of the moisture content in the tree, so that it contains in the cambium layer. So that is the difference between sapwood is heartwood and cambium layer. So it is living and outermost portion of wood is stem or a branch. So heartwood, you know, cambium layer is a thin layer of the sap between sapwood and the inner bark. Bark is nothing but the protection, right? Tree will protect from the that outerwards, any outer, either we will chisel or anything, so that environmental effects it will reduce that effect. So that is the, we call it as that is an bark. So there are two types of bark, inner bark and outer bark. You can see here. So this portion is outer bark and this portion is inner bark, right? So this is outer bark, you can see, and inner bark is just here. So inner bark and outer bark, it is the outermost part of the tree. So now what the question they have asked, that is a cambium layer is situated between, where it is between the sapwood and the heartwood. It is between the sap and the heartwood, right? Got the answer? Cambium layer. Okay, next. Now next question. By seeing the sketch only you can understand this is a structural analysis question. This is a structural analysis. For the structure shown in figure, fixed and moment at support A. They are asking the support at A. What is the fixed and moment? Let me tell you. First of all, what we have to understand. So this is the first we have to resolve the force into horizontal and vertical components. Always we resolve the force in two direction, one horizontal and vertical. So and take the moment about this point. Okay, let me draw this diagram here so that you can understand what actually I am doing and you can understand easily. I think the diagram is like this only. Okay, and this one is like this, you can see. So 1 minute, don't worry, I will draw one more time. Okay, so because clarity is important. Okay, this is the fixed support here. You can see this is a point 1 meter, and it is the 10 kilonewton is acting like this, 10 kilonewton acting like this, right? And this is 1 meter, this is 1 meter, and this one also 1 meter, I hope so. Yes, and this is a 45 degree. The angle between these two is 45 degree. Now tell me. So this is sorry, 1 minute. This is 2 meter, 1 meter, 1 meter. Okay. So you have to resolve the forces in horizontal and vertical. This is very simple. Already you know, right? So that is in the horizontal and vertical direction. So by seeing this, we have to take the moment from this point, right? How we can write? 10 sine 45. It is in the vertical direction, and it is in the 10 cos 45. It is in the horizontal direction, right? Second point. Now after second point, we will go to the next, taking the moment about this point, right? That is the A point. We are taking the moment about the A point. So 10 sine 45, you can see this one, 10 sine 45 into this distance plus 10 cos 45 into this distance, right? So horizontal, that total 10 cos 45 means that value into the distance, value into the distance. Horizontal means horizontal distance, vertical means vertical distance we have to take. Okay, now so when we equate that one, we will get what? That is a 14.14 kilonewton per meter. It's very simple question they ask, right? If you understand the concept, if you know the concept, you can easily answer. So 14.14 kilonewton is the answer for the question, kilonewton meter. Okay, right? Done. Next question. Question number 29. As per the stress block defined as IS 456, so this question is asked from the RCC subject. The limiting depth of neutral axis in flexural member having effective depth D reinforced with Fe 550 grade steel in tension side is. See, so the answer, if you want direct answer, I can tell this is the answer for this question. But if you want in detail what actually the values and how you have to calculate this one, let me tell you. So there are two methods. I think you know, working stress method and the limit state method. Already I have explained these theoretical part in my RCC classes. If you want, you can visit the playlist of our RCC subject, that is the theoretical part. So these are the two, working stress and the limit state method. So in working stress, in limit state method, strain base approach, it is always strain base approach. So for the similarity of the triangle of the strain diagram, you know this, all this one, right? So D is the effective depth and XU max is the limiting neutral axis. So Fe 550 is the grade of the steel, and Fy is the 550 is the yield strength of the steel. Okay, so the elasticity of the steel, that is 2 into 10 raised to power 5 Newton per millimeter square. When you put this here, you will get this one. But this equation is not important for this question. But in future, if they ask, for example, in SSC JEE, there is two papers, right? In paper 2, they may ask the derivation. For that also, for our explanation also, I have put at this one. Okay. So the answer for this question is 0.44D is the answer for the given question. Okay, next question. Question number 30. The optimistic most likely and 1 minute. Optimistic most likely and pessimistic estimates of an activity are 4 days, 11 days and 12 days respectively. The expected completion time of this activity. So this question asks in, that is in construction management, or we can say project management, right? Let me tell you in simple way. So there are two different methods for drawing a network diagram. So what do you mean by network diagram? Network diagram is, it will show all the activities in one simple manner. To know how much time or duration is required, what is the resources, for all that they will draw in one simple diagram, that is the network diagram. So for that network diagram, to analyze or to draw that one, or to make the resource very useful in complete the project in given time, we will use two methods. That is, one is CPM method, one is PERT analysis. We can say that is in techniques, CPM and PERT. So these are the different two techniques. Coming to this question, PERT, so project evaluation and review technique is used where the activity time estimates are stochastic in nature. For each activity, 3 values of the time. So they will take 3 values: optimistic, most likely, pessimistic are estimated. Let me tell you, so what are these two? Let me take one example: optimistic, most likely and pessimistic. For example, if you are started the project, right? So optimistic means it is the shortest possible time required for an completion of an activity. For example, you are doing an foundation work, right? You are doing a foundation work. So optimistic time means it is in shortest possible time. You actually required how many days? Actually you required 10 days, but in 5 days you have completed. So 5 is the optimistic time of that foundation activity. Okay. Next, most likely time means it is a time required for the completion of an activity under normal circumstances, means no delay or no hurry. So you have completed in 10 days only, so that is the most likely time. Minimum required time 10 days, you have completed in 10 days, so that is the most likely time. Pessimistic time is a time longest possible time required for the completion of an activity. For example, if you are doing an foundation work, right, actual days you required is 10, but you have completed in 5 days, that is an optimistic time. 10 is an most likely time. Due to some uncertain environmental conditions, or rain occurs, anything occurs, so you have taken some more days. So finally, how many days you have taken? 15 days. These 15 days we call it as an pessimistic time, right? Pessimistic time. Now in question they have given these three values, you have to put in a formula. So what is the formula? Expected time of an activity is determined by, I will write the formula here so that it will visible for all of you. TE is equal to T naught, let me tell you, T naught plus 4 Tm plus Tp divided by 6. So this is the formula, and this is a variance formula, Tp minus T naught divided by 6 whole square. Now the calculation you can do. So what they are given, let me write today here, T naught Tm and Tp, sorry, T naught Tm and Tp. What is T naught? T naught is optimistic time. So optimistic most and optimistic is 4, 11 and 12, right? 4, 11 and 12. You can write here 4, 11 and 12. Tm, 1 minute. Tm is 11, right? So this is 11 and this is 12. Okay, now you have to put in the formula, that is the 4 plus 4 into 11 plus 12 divided by 6. So you will get 10 days. Simple answer, but you have to remember this formula. I think you have understood optimistic time, most likely time and pessimistic time. If this question repeats in 2020 exam, you must answer. Okay, right? So the answer for this question is 10 days. Next question. This question is RCC. By seeing the question only we can say that is a question of RCC. A reinforced cement concrete beam section has a size of 300 mm width and 400 mm effective depth. 300 mm what? 300 mm width. So this is a 300 mm, this is a width, and 400 mm effective depth. From the center of the reinforcement, this is 400 mm. The grade of the concrete is M20, right, and the grade of the steel is Fe415. Ultimate bending moment, right, Mu is equal to 150 kilonewton meter. The beam has to be designed. Let me tell you, first of all, understand what you mean by singly reinforced beam, doubly reinforced beam, right? Singly reinforced beam means, for example, this is the cross section, this is another cross section, right? This is neutral axis. If you provide the reinforcement only at the what? This is which there are two zones, compression zone and tension zone. So this is what? Compression zone and tension zone. If you provided steel at bottom only, right? So compression, 1 minute, right? If you provided the reinforcement on compression zone and tension zone, right? So that is an doubly reinforced beam, that is the doubly reinforced, and this one is a singly reinforced beam. So this is neutral axis. Okay, next, now to know which type of beam is to be used, determine the ultimate bending moment and limiting bending moment for the doubly reinforced section. So when we have to use the doubly reinforced section, when depth is restricted, reversal of the stresses are subjected to impact loads. So then we can say that is an Mu is more than Mu limit. right? Mu limit is compression force into lever arm. So what is lever arm? I think we have done the that stress strain curve, right, for the concrete. So it is a what, the distance between the point of application of compression force and the tension force, lever arm, right? So the lever arm can be denoted by d minus 0.42 xu max, that is into compression force. So that is the mu limit. Now we have two values. In previous question also we have done with 550, right? That is a 0.44 d. So if you having limiting bending moment is mu limit, ultimate bending moment is mu. So Fe 250, if you taken xu max is 0.53 d, 0.48 d, 0.46 d. Okay. So now in the question what they have given? In the question they have given grade of the concrete is. So this is the neutral axis. Sorry, I will can't draw neatly. Kindly please adjust. So this is the B, and this one is the effective depth D. This is B, right? So this is B and this is D. So grade of the steel is Fe415. Ultimate bending moment is 150 kilonewton per meter. This is given. Now we have to calculate the limiting bending moment, that is mu limit. Mu is given. Mu given. Now mu is given means you have to use the compression force into lever arm formula. So 0.36 FCK into 0.4 D. So that is 0.138 FCK B into D square kilonewton meter. So when you put all these values you will get 132.48 kilonewton meter. One more point, if in the exam this type of question asks, just see that one which grade of steel has given and directly put in this formula, right, and make some manual calculation and put nearby answer, right, because calculator is not allowed in the exams, right? So 138.48, so it is mu is more than mu limit, so we can say this we have to design with the doubly reinforced beam. I think you have cleared, I think I have cleared all your doubt. Next question. According to IS 456, again RCC question. Minimum grade of concrete with maximum free water cement ratio is 0.5 and minimum cement content is 300 kg per meter cube. For this condition, right, so what we have to take the different grades. For this there is a table that is from the IS 456. IS 456 2000, they have some mentioned the important values, that is, so exposure condition, for exposure condition reinforced concrete and minimum cement content. For example, if mild condition, right, if they give a mild condition, maximum water you have to take 0.55, minimum concrete grade is M20, and for minimum cement content is 300. For moderate also it is 300 kg per meter cube, and minimum grade of the concrete is M25 and moderate is 0.5, that is a free water cement ratio. For severe condition, very severe and extreme condition, so these are the values you have to remember. Please pause the video and take the screenshot so that you can remember all the values. They may ask any either mild, severe or very severe or extreme conditions. Here they ask about the moderate. So the answer for the given question is the M25 is the answer for the given question. Right, students? Let's move to the next question. Okay. Next question. A heavy elastic ball drops from the ceiling of a room. Right? A ball drops from the, this is a ball, it drops from the where? From the ceiling of a room. Right? This is a ceiling of a room. After rebounding once from the floor, rebounding means after, for example, this is a floor, this is the another floor, ball is just dropped from here, ball is dropped from here, after hitting here again it goes like this, right? Because rebound means it will go up to for example, you have done in the your childhood, right? If you throw the ball, it will come up to some certain ball, certain height, right? So that they are telling rebounding once from the floor reaches a height equal to the 3/4 that of the ceiling. This is the 3/4 of this total height. So that of ceiling, the coefficient of restitution is, right? So the coefficient of restitution is defined as what? First of all, understand that is the final velocity to the initial velocity between two objects after the collision. You can see this is the initial and this is the final, right? So they are telling the initial velocity and the final velocity of the object. So that is the coefficient of restitution, E. So this value is 0 to 1. So E is a 0 for inelastic collision and E is 1 for perfectly elastic collision. So coefficient of restriction is an important because it determines whether it is collision in elastic or inelastic. By doing this test you can understand whether it is elastic or inelastic. Okay, simple step. So here are the two bodies or the floor and the ball. Now assuming height between the, so for this problem we have to do calculation like this. The floor height is h meters, this one, this is h. After first rebounds it rises to 3 by h by 4. So here the two bodies are floor on the wall. Let me see, you can see, so this is the floor, we can say this is ceiling and this is floor. So ball will drop from this point to this point, okay, and it will rebounds here. So this is 3h by 4, right? So this is the total h. So this is total h. This is a ball. So before collision velocity of the floor is 0. Before collision always velocity is 0. So velocity of the ball at B point. Okay. So root into 2gh for I will tell you. Okay. After completion I will tell you. After completion this problem I will tell you. So as ball is free falling body, that is root 2gh. After collision velocity of the flow is 0 and Vb, that is a initial velocity is equal to root 2g 3 into h by 4, this value, right? So this value they have taken for instead of this one. So this is h. Okay, so the final velocity is 0. We know this formula, right? We know this formula, v square minus u square is equal to 2as. So after collision what? So this will become like this. And the coefficient of restitution, this is the formula for the coefficient of restitution, Vb minus means final minus initial, right? So that we have to keep like this. I will write here, this is 2 into g into 3 into h whole divided by root 2 into g into h. So E is equal to, we will get root 3 by 2 is the answer for the given question. Okay, and this question is asked from the which subject? It is from the which subject? Can anybody tell me from which subject it is asked? It is from the what? Hydraulics, or we can say hydraulic or FM. So this is the question from the hydraulics. So the answer for the question is root 3 by 2. I think you have understood. By sketches you can understand easily. Okay, don't worry. Next question. What is the theme of the World Environment Day 2017? What is the World Environmental Day? What is the World Environmental Day 2017? Right? That is connecting people to nature. Right? This is sometimes they may ask this is like a general question they are asked in the technical, but it is related to environmental engineering. So the World Environment Day is on UN most important day for the encouraging worldwide awareness of the action of the production of our environment. You know this one, and it was celebrated for first time in 1974. Host country for 2018 was India. So theme of 2018 was beating plastic pollution. Please avoid plastic. I am requesting all my subscribers as well as my students. So use only reusable materials. So this is my kind message for all of you. Okay. So the answer for this question is connecting people to the nature. Next question. So this is the environmental question, environmental subject, environment. Okay. According to IS 800 2007 DSS, design of steel structure question. The nominal shear capacity of M20 bolt of grade 4.6 with one shear plane passing through the bolt shank and one shear plane passing through the thread portion is, right? Let me first understand what they are telling. So before going to start that question, first of all understand, so what are the different parts of any nut bolt. So these in sketch you can see this is a nut bolt. So this is the head and this is the radius. Radius means when you see this is the nut, right? This is a bolt, and when you see the radius from here it will look like this, right? So this is a radius, and this portion is shank, this portion. So this is a shank portion, and we can say that is run out, and this is nut, and this is the thread. So this total portion we call it as an thread length, and this is grip length, right? This is a what? Thread length and grip length. Total length we call it as a nominal length. I think you have clear some basic about this DSS, nut and bolt. Okay, now let me go to the question. So the shearing strength of the bolt is given by. So what is the shear strength of the bolt? Can be given by VDS by Fu by root 3 gamma MB NS ASB plus NN ANB. Okay, so FUB is what? Ultimate bearing strength of the bolts. NN is the number of shear planes. For example, how many number of shear planes with threads intercepting the right shear plane. NS is the number of shear planes without threads intercepting the shear plane. ASB is the nominal shank area of the bolt. That is a pi r square. Nominal shank area. What is the shank area? You can see. So this is the nominal shank area. And ANB is the thread area of the bolt. So this is the thread area. Where is the thread? Yes, you can see. This is the thread length. This one, thread length and grip length. So here they have given in the question, right, 4.6. So 4.6 means 4 signifies the ultimate stress, that is a 400 megapascal, and 6 signifies the 60% of their ultimate stress, yield stress, as 240 megapascal. If you write the 4.6 means 4 is different and 6 is different, right? 4 significance 400 megapascal is a ultimate stress. 6 means 60% of ultimate stress is yield stress, right? So this is what I have told up to here is some basic point. Now coming to this question, let me write what they have given. For 4.6 grade of bolts, FUB is a 400 MPa and FYB is a 240 MPa, that is a megapascal. For M20, shear capacity bolt diameter of the bolt is 20 mm and NN is 1 and NS is 1, because they have given NS and NN. So nominal shank area of the bolt. Shank area, again this one. So this area. So shank area we can say this is circular, right? So pi d raised to 4 divided by pi d square by 4. Sorry, pi d square by 4. So when you do this one, you will get the answer, right, like this. So thread area of the bolt, right? Thread area is 0.78 into pi into d square by 4. Now VDSB, that is FUB by root 3 by gamma MB, that is into 1 into ASB plus 1 into ANB. So 1.78 into pi by 4 into 20 square, 400 by root 3 into 1. So 10 raised to power minus 3 kilonewton. So the answer for this question is 129.148 kilonewton. So only you have to remember which one? You have to remember this formula, important this one and this one. So these two are very important, right? So the answer for the given question is 129.14 kilonewton. So this is the DSS question. Next question. According to IS 800 2000 slenderness ratio, DSS again. of lacing bar in built up steel compression member shall not exceed. That they are asking the slenderness ratio. Right? Let me tell you. First of all, understand. As per IS 800 1984 clause 5.7.2.3, slenderness ratio of lacing bar for compression member shall not exceed 145. Right? So lacing bar. What do you mean by lacing bar? Right? So lacing is nothing but let me we will discuss in the upcoming video in an upcoming question. Okay, so in a riveted connection, effective length of the lacing bar for a determination of the permissible stress shall not be taken as the length between the inner and rivet of the bar. Single lacing, it is 0.7 for single lacing, and zero point 0.7 of this length for double lacing effectively riveted at the intersection. In welded connection, the effective length shall be considered as 0.7 times the distance between the inner ends of the weld connecting the lacing bar of the member. Right? So what is the answer for this question is, that is a 145 is a slenderness ratio, that is for the bars, that is built up section, that is in the compression member. Okay, right? Next question number 37. The splice plate for the steel column is generally designed as DSS, design of steel structure question. So first of all, understand what you mean by splice plate. Right? So for your best understanding, I have put some images for you. You can see this is a column, this is another column here, you can see at bottom. So this is column 2, this is column 1. Right? So for example, this is from the ground floor. Right? From the ground floor it is came to the first floor. But if you want to increase the length of that column, that is steel column, right, you required some bolts, all those things. Right? For that you can see this is a what, this is a splice plate. Right? This is a splice plate, and these are the nuts. Right? Or we can say nut and bolt. You can see here. So these are the nut and bolts. You can see this one properly. They have to maintain the distance between these two, and you have to study the properly. So these are the splice plate, and the whole assembly we call it as an column splice. Okay, but in question what they are asking, the splice plate, this one. So this is the splice plate, this is a column plate, and this is a splice plate. So the splice plate for a steel column, this is a steel column, is generally designed for, right? So it is generally designed for what, let me tell you. So the column splices is a joint provided in the length of the member. You want to increase, you have to use the column splice. So in the column splice, if the load is truly concentric, then theoretically no splice is required, since the compression will be directly transferred through the bearing. So but it is not possible. Right? So every load should be in center. We are assuming the it should be distributed thoroughly or correctly or in equally, but it will not. So you have to use a column splice. But truly axial load in column never occurs. Axial load will not occur. So the columns are most of the times also subjected to bending. Columns always subjected to bending. So this raises the necessity of the column splice. So the column sections are required to be spliced for the following cases: when the available length of the structural steel section is less than the required length of the column. Right? So if you want to increase the length, you have to use the column splice. So in the case of multi-story buildings, the section of the column required for the various stories may be different. For example, if you are constructing the 10 floor of 5 floor of steel structure, so if you want to increase the column height, right, so we have to use the column splices. So in multi-story building, for convenience of fabrication, it is kept 5-meter length. So splicing of column is necessary to join the fabrication along the length. So this is the theory, some theory part of the column splice. So this is a sketch of column splice. Okay, so now what is the answer? Column splice plate for the steel column is generally designed for where? Short column, long column, intermediate column, or based on the slenderness ratio. Can you tell me what is the answer for this question? Right? So it is based on the length of the member or what? So what is the answer for this question? So answer for this question is what? That is a intermediate column. Right? Next. So okay, one minute. So these are some specification for the design of splices. If you want, you can take here. So splices are designed as a short columns. Sorry. So splices are designed as a short columns. So where the ends of the compression members are faced for complete bearing over the whole area. So their splices are designed to hold the members accurately in position and resist any tension where bending is also there. So connecting members are not faced for complete bearing. Then splices are designed to transmit all the forces which they are subjected to. Splices are designed as short columns. So important note, splice plate should be what? Located at a place where flexural movement in column is 0 and location of point of counterflexure. Due to direct load, there are 2 points, counterflexure varying from middle of the column to the points above or below the column. So they are asking here, the splice plate for the steel column is generally designed as which one? We can say this is an splices are designed for the short columns. Okay, this one my mistake, don't worry, this is my mistake. So these are the what? Short columns. So the answer for the 37 question is short column. Next question. In a conjugate beam method, fixed support in actual beam is considered as dash support in the conjugate beam. Structural analysis, right? This question is from structural analysis. First of all, understand what you mean by conjugate beam method. So this is the one method. So this is one beam, fixed beam, and this is a real beam, right? But in conjugate beam, it will become like this, right? So the conjugate beam is defined as an imaginary beam with same dimension as that of original beam, but load at any point on the conjugate beam is equal to the bending moment at that point divided by EI. This is the main difference. Here bending moment is same as what you calculate, but here, right, what? At any point conjugate beam equal to the bending moment divided by what? The EI. Flexural rigidity, we can say that one. So in the real beam, if it is fixed, but in conjugate beam it is free support. If in real beam it is free support, it is what? Fixed support. Roller support, hinge support. Hinge support, roller support. Opposite. Remember opposite. Which one is opposite each other? You have to remember. Fixed. If in real beam it is fixed, and in conjugate beam it is free support. In real beam it is free support. In conjugate beam it is fixed support. Like this, simultaneously you have to remember. So the shear force in conjugate beam at any point, slope at that point are real beam. Bending moment in conjugate beam at a point is a deflection at the point of the real beam. So these are the important points you have to remember. So now the answer for this question is what? Actually they are asking the fixed support in actual beam. Fixed support in actual beam is what? That is a free support in the conjugate beam. Okay. So the answer for this question is free support in the conjugate beam. Next question. A right angle triangle with base 50 mm and height 75 mm is placed with its base horizontal, subjected to shear force, strength of material question, of F. If the moment of inertia is I about the axis passing through the centroid parallel to the base, then the shear stress at the axis passing through the centroid is. Let me tell you, first of all, understand shear stress distribution for the triangular section, right? So considering Y from the vertex point, let me tell you this sketch, very simple. So this is the what? The triangular portion. You can see there is a 2 points, here 1 point and here 1 point, right? So these 2 points, we can say that from here to here, this is a base, and this is from the center of gravity is h by 3, and this is 2h by 3, and this is total h. So this is 2y by 3, from this point, and this is the portion E to F, and this is a B. They are taking strip of this foundation, means you have to take the small strip and you have to identify. Now this is the shear stress distribution. So this is the maximum at this point, that is at the h by 2, right? By at the distance h by 2, shear stress is maximum. So shear stress is given by T is equal to F into A into Y divided by I into B, where F is what? Shear force, where A is the what? Area till considering the section. This see what they have done, they have drawn like this and they have taken this portion, right? So they have this small portion for the consideration, for calculation purpose. Y is the distance from the center of gravity of the considered portion to the CG of the body, right? So Y, that is a Y distance from this point, you can see this is a Y, and I is the moment of inertia, B is the width of the width at the considered section. Now how we will calculate area, that is half into base into height, right? This portion. Now only this portion we are calculating the area because we are considering that one. So half into base, this is B, right? Half B into Y, right? Area. Now Y is equal to 2 by 3 into H minus 2 by 3 into Y, right? So T is equal to F into half into base into height, this portion, that is F into A, right? So into what? 2 into H by 3 minus 2 into Y by 3, right, divided by I into B. So T is equal to what? F by 3I into H into Y minus Y square. Okay, so now the given base of the triangle. So what is the base of the triangle? 50 mm. So 50 mm. Height of the triangle. What is the height of the triangle? Is 75 mm. Moment of inertia is I, shear force F. Now Y is 2H by 3. So H by 3 means 2H by 3 is 50 mm. Now when we put those values, T is equal to F by 3I, H into Y minus Y square, we will get 416.67 into F divided by I is the answer for the given question, right? For understand this one, only this is the important one, only this portion is important one, but if you understand all this explanation in your mind only, you can directly come to this point only in the examination. Okay, for your clear understanding, I have drawn the sketch and I have mentioned all the formulas. If you want, you can skip and directly go to the final step, right? So the answer for this question is what? How much? 416.67 by F by I is the answer. Next question, right? Don't look into the time, we will finish all the questions because exam is very near, only 2 days left. Rectangular beam section 300 mm width and 500 mm effective depth has a tensile reinforcement of 1346 mm square. The beam is M is constructed using M20 grade of concrete and Fe 415 steel. So this is RCC question. Let me tell you first. So first of all, understand this is B and this is the overall depth and this is the area of steel and this is neutral axis, right? Now this is the strain diagram and stress diagram. These two are stress and strain diagram, you can see. So this is strain and this is stress diagram, and this point we call it as from here to here, this is what? Lever arm. This is 0.446. So the tensile force is 0.87, this one 87 Fi by AST, compression force 0.36 FCK into XU by B is a compression force. Actual neutral axis of the beam is given by what? Compression force into tensile force. We have to equate compression and tensile, you have to equate. So then you will get XU is equal to this formula, you will get XU is equal to 0.87 Fi by AST, 0.36 FCK by B. So these are the some notations about this one. Let me come to the problem. What they have actually given. Okay, so what actually they have given? They have given to calculate what? Neutral axis depth. So width of the beam is 300 mm, effective depth is 500 mm, right? And the area of the steel. Okay, can I draw here one more time so that you can understand easily? So this is the what? Neutral axis and width is 300 mm, right? Effective depth from this section, effective depth is 500 mm, Area of this steel AST is 1346 mm square. Grade of concrete is M20. FCK is 20 Newton per millimeter square, and Fy is 415. So we have to calculate like this. So that is a 225 mm is the answer for the given question. Okay, 225 mm is the answer for the given question. Let's move to the next question. Sorry. The suitable system of pre-tension beam. This is PSC question. Pre-tension beam is what? Which principle you will use? Okay, let me tell you clearly. So Euler's long line method is a system used in the pre-tension. So what is that one? So other system like Fréchet and Gifford and Magnet-Batten and post-tensioning system, a large number of beams are produced in an individual element. Right. So if you want to understand all those things, please read this one, pause this video and you can read. Okay, so for your information only I have put all this theory for all of you. Okay, so the answer for the given question is what is the answer for this question? That is the what? Euler's, that is used for the pre-tension beam. Right. Next question, question number 42. The polar moment of inertia of a circular lamina of diameter d is Ip. So this is strength of material question. So what is the polar moment? Pi d raised to 4 divided by 32 or 64. Right? Pi d raised to 4 divided by how much? That is the how much? Polar moment is 64. So polar moment of inertia is measure of object capacity to oppose or resist torsion. This is pen. I am twisting this one, but this pen resist. So that is a polar moment inertia. When some amount of torque is applied to it on a specified axis. Right? I am applying on this x-axis or y-axis through this pen, right, and twisting in x direction or y direction, but it not rotating, it opposing. So that is a polar moment of inertia. So it is denoted by Iz or J. Right? So it is denoted by pi d raised to 4 divided by 64. Ixs and Iy are the moment of with respect to x-axis and y-axis. This one you know, right? So this is the what? The formula. Right? Polar moment of inertia, object that have rotational symmetry such as cylinder or hollow tube. The equation can be simplified to like this: pi d raised to 4 divided by 34. The moment of inertia for solid circular shaft, but here they are asked about for the circular lamina. They are asked, right? So they are asked about the lamina, means the equation will be like this: pi d raised to 4 divided by 32 is the answer. If they ask a solid, that is what? Pi d raised to 4 divided by 64. Circular lamina is pi d raised to 4 divided by 32 is the answer for the given question. Okay, my dear students. Next question. The gross command area of a distributary is 6000 hectares, 80% of which is cultivable irrigable. The intensity of irrigation, this is from the irrigation subject. Irrigation subject for Kharif season is 25%. Area to be irrigated in Kharif season is, let me tell you, right? So what do you mean by cultivable land? Or cultivable means how much area is you can use for the agriculture, that is cultivable. So cultivable land is percentage of cultivable into gross area. So area to be irrigated means how much area we can do agriculture, right? So the 1 minute, area to be 1 minute. So the what actually they are asking, area to be irrigated. Yes, area to be irrigated into percentage of what? IO is the intensity of the irrigation. This is IOI is the intensity of irrigation into percentage of cultivable land into gross area. Percentage of cultivable land, that is how much you are what we can say, that is you are using for the agriculture, and you are producing some good crops from that we can call it as, that is a cultivable. So the percentage of cultivable land. So in the given question what they have given, let me tell you one more time. Distributary command area of the distributary is 6000 hectares, right? 6000 hectares. 80% of the land is culturable, irrigable. So they have given this one, and intensity of the irrigation is 25%. So the area to be irrigated is 0.25 into 0.8, right? So 0.25 is the intensity into 80% of the land is culturable into 6,000, right? 0.25 into 0.8 into 6,000, that is a gross area. So you will get how much area to be irrigated. For example, simply you have to understand this is the area, right? So this is a question they have given, like gross command area is 6,000 hectares. This is 6,000 hectares, right? If you are putting the water, but the intensity that frequently is 25%, okay, so area how much will be irrigated, how much area will be irrigated, that is a only 1,200 hectares will be irrigated, only this portion of will be irrigated. Simple questions you have to understand. Next question. Removal of soluble organic chemicals is possible by the addition to the biological mixed liquor of an activated sludge process. Environmental engineering question. So what do you mean by this? Soluble organic chemicals, right? Let me tell you, activated carbon is a powerful absorbent used in the wide range of water treatment facilities. So it is used throughout the municipal and industrial wastewater treatment facility, two for the drinking water, wastewater and municipal water. Unique porous structure and vast surface area to be activated carbon combined with the attraction forces allow activated carbon to capture, hold various types of materials on its surfaces, like this. So this is material, if you put the water on this with that dirt water, it will use like a filter. So removal of soluble organic chemical is possible by addition of activated carbon. Alum is used for the coagulant, chlorine is used for the disinfection. Very important point. So now the question answer for this question is what? This is the activated carbon is a powerful absorbent used for the wide range, right? So the activated carbon we have to use. Next question. Corbon's method of design of bridge is applicable. So bridge engineering. This is the question from bridge engineering. When the ratio of span width is between dash and dash, right? So you can take this sketch and read this one. I think you know the basic of the bridge engineering. If you don't know, please go through this sketch. You can understand what is PR, what is abutment, what is superstructure, and what is HFL, right? High flood level, what is approach embankment, all those things you can get by this component of typical bridge. Now Corbon's method is one of the method, that is the analysis of the bridge. So it is done for the following condition. So the ratio of span to width of the deck is greater than 2 and less than 4, right? If it is greater than 2 and less than 4, then we have to use the Corbon's method. Longitudinal girder is interconnected by the least 5 symmetrically spaced cross girders. So the cross girders extends to a depth of 0.75 times the depth of the longitudinal girder. So here in the question they have asked, that is what the distance, that is the 2 and 4. 2 and 4 is the answer for the question. Right? So span width is between 2 and 4. We have to take that one. Next question. Question number 46. Which of the following bearings are forgiving in that they can tolerate loads and movements exceeding the design values? Right? Which one of the following bearing forgiving that in that tolerate loads and movements exceeding the design values? Let me tell you. Bridge bearings, right? So this is again the bridge question. So bridge bearings are structural device positioned between superstructure and substructure. For example, this one, and this is column. So between these two, there is, if any load, so it will take by this bridge bearing. So bridge bearing. So this is upper portion, this is lower portion. At the center there is a bridge bearing. So the principal function of bearings are what? Transfer the load from here to here to substructure to accommodate relative movement between superstructure and substructure, right? Above the ground level superstructure, right below substructure. So types of bearings, you know, sliding bearing. Sliding bearing utilize one plain metal plate sliding against another plate to accommodate translation. So these are used where The rotations caused by the deflection at the support and negligible. So these are limited to a span length of 15 meter. So this is the sliding bearing. Rocker and pin bearing means type of expansion bearing. It consists of pin at the top which that facilitate rotation. It will rotate, and curved surface at the bottom. A pin and curved surface at the bottom like this. Okay, and that accommodate translation movement. You can see like this. So there is a pin at the top. So rocker and pin bearings are mainly used in steel bridges. So in the steel bridges they may use. So the answer for this question is what? So what is the answer question they have asked? They can tolerate loads and movement exceeding the design values. Which one of the following bearings are forgiving? Right. So supports are negligible. So rocker and pin bearings or what? Which one will use for this one? Right. What is the answer for this question? Can anyone comment? Anyone, if you are watching this video, please comment me with the question number, the question 46 answer by seeing this one. Okay, so you can see this one also you can see. So the roller bearing, so these are the composed of one or more rollers between two parallel steel plates. So single roller bearing facilitate both rotation and translation and accommodate facility movement. So they only have the very limited vertical load capacity. So electromagnetic bearing means they are formed by horizontal layers of synthetic or natural rubber in thin layers. So internal structure consists of sandwich between mild steel and rubber molded in one unit. Electromagnetic bearings pads compress on vertical load, accommodate horizontal rotation and provide lateral shear movement. Right, they will give shear movement. So the electron bearing pads are most economical solution used in construction of large span bridges and buildings. So by seeing this one, we can say this is a very helpful, that is high horizontal movement can be reached utilizing the rubber bearings with polytetrafluoroethylene PTEF. So they can tolerate the loads for the up to what? Curved bearing, quad bearing, and right, the disc bearing. There are the different types also here. Right, so above the design values. So they can tolerate the loads and movements above design values. So the higher horizontal movement can be reached utilizing the rubber bearings. Right, we can say the which one is the answer for this question. Now let me tell you, because so many by seeing the so many theory you can understand, and let me tell you how many students are watching this video correctly, so that comment me in the comment box the answer of this question, 46 question answer. Okay, next question. Question number 47. Which of the system are particularly suited for construction of pre-stressed concrete superstructure of long span bridges without the use of stacking from the below? We can say this is again bridge engineering. Right? So which system we can say? Pre-stressed concrete is ideally suited for the construction of medium and long span bridges. Solid slabs are for the span up to 10 to 20 meter, while T-beam slab deck are suitable for in range from 20 to 40 meter. Right, T-beam. Pre-stressed concrete has been widely used throughout the world for simply supported continuous balance cantilever suspension hammer added the. So this type of bridge ranges from 20 to 500 meter. So it is used for the bridges for 20 to 500 meter. Post tensioning is ideally suited for what? Pre-stressing long span girder at the site of construction with the need of costly factory type of installation like pre-tensioning beds. So segmental construction is ideally suited for the post tensioning work. So in this method, number of segments can be pre-stressed, resulting in integrated structures. So what actually they are telling? So segmental means by part. So ideally suited for the post tension works, right? So segmental we have to use for the what? Pre-stressed concrete superstructures of the long span bridges. Okay. So pre-stress resulting in an integrated structures. Okay. So the answer for this question is segmental. Okay. Segmental construction is means I think for any ideally suited post tensioning work. Post tensioning work they will make part by part, right? So first, second, third, like this they will make by part, so that we call it as a segmental construction. Next question, question number 48. The measured pH values of incoming and outgoing water, environmental engineering. Right? Environmental engineering question. Water treatment plant are 7.3 and 8.5 respectively. What is the average pH of the water, assuming the linear variation of pH with the time? Right? Let me tell you, pH is a measurement of what? Acidity or alkalinity of a solution. We can say hydrogen ions, that is 6.5 less than or 6 more than 6.5. Mathematically, pH is a negative algorithm of hydrogen ion concentration present in the solution expressed in the molarity, right? So molarity is defined as a number of moles per liter of solution, mole per liter. So this is a formula. pH is equal to minus of log 10 of H concentration. So H plus 10 minus pH. So H plus is the concentration of hydrogen ions. Do not use direct pH values H plus, as the variation is linear. Okay. So in the question, right? So in the question what they have given, let me read one more time. So it is a pH value of incoming and outgoing water. Incoming water 7.3, outgoing water is 8.5. So H plus ion of incoming is 10 minus 7.3, right? So 10 minus 7.3, you have to put this value here first. So we can't use directly here because they have told here H plus I plus H plus, that is even divided by 2. We have to make this one H average, right? So we have to take the H average, that is the concentration of hydrogen ions. We have to take the average. So that is a 10 minus 7.3, 10 into power of 8.3. So H plus average, that is divided by 2. Then we put those values here, right? So minus of log, here calculator not allowed in exams, but if they given, if you remember the values, you can do. Okay, minus log 2 in 0.66 into 10 raised to power minus 8. So the 7.57 is the answer for the given question, that is a pH average. Right? Simple questions they are asked, but you have to remember, if your calci is not allowed, then very big problem for my students. Okay, because all are dependent on the calci only. Okay, let me complete these two questions so that we can finish this class. A city has a population of, right, 10 lakhs with an average 10 lakh with an average rate of demand 160 liters per head per day. What is the actual number of filters required if the size of the each filter is 9 meter into 5 meter? Assume the average filtration rate. So this is environmental question, environmental engineering. So filtration rate is 4500 liters per hour per meter square. Let me tell you one by one we will discuss. So population demand is equal to what? Population into per capita demand. So area required for filter bed, right? This is for example, this is filter bed. So we have to calculate the area of this filter bed. Population divided by average filtration rate, number of filter beds required, number of filters, right? How many numbers required for this quantity of wastewater we are treatment, right? For treating that one, that we have to calculate by using total area required for filter bed. Total area, for example, this is the largest area, right? We have different filters, right, like this. So the total area required for filter bed divided by area of single filter bed, right? Total area, this total area divided by single filter bed. So that is the number of filter beds required. Now in the question what they given, the population of the city is 10 lakhs. Average rate of demand is 160 liters per capita demand. So size of each filter, that is 9 into 5 meter. Size of each filter is 9 into 5. Average filtration rate 4500 liter per hour per meter square. Population demand, right, 10 lakh into 160, right? Population demand is average rate, how much demand, what is the demand and what is the population. When you multiply, what you will get? You will get population demand, that is the for 24 hours liter per hour. Okay, 160 into 10 raised to power 5. Now area required for filter bed, right? So that is, if it is not visible, I will write here 160 into 10 raised to power 5 divided by 24 hours whole divided by 4500, right? So the area required for filter bed we have done here, right? Area required for one filter, population divided by average filtration rate. So we are dividing this one, we will get 148 meter square. Now the number of filter bed required is, number of filter beds is total area required divided by area of single filter bed. So we will get 148 by 9 into 5. So beds cannot be made 3.29. So this is a 3.29. Beds is always 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 like this. So it is considering 4 beds. So in general, one standby filter bed is kept. So 4 plus 1. Standby means if one filter is goes for washing or any maintenance under maintenance, so there is a chances of we have to construct one extra bed, one extra filtration. So the answer for this question is what? It is a 5 filter beds is required, 5 units are required, right? Simple, you have to understand, right? Last question of this class. If initial dissolved oxygen, this is again environmental question, environmental engineering. Initial dissolved oxygen DO and final DO after 5 days incubation at 20 degrees Celsius is 1%. Dilution sample are 5 milligram per liter and 4 milligram per liter respectively. What is the 5-day BOD of the same sample? Very simple question this one, right? If they given like this question, you have to answer very carefully. What is BOD? It is an oxygen demand for microorganism to decompose biodegradable organic matter present in the wastewater under anaerobic condition, right? Anaerobic and aerobic, with oxygen, without oxygen. BOD is a measure of the strength of wastewater within 5 days, right? We have 60 to 70% of organic content is oxidized. That's why we will take 5 days BOD. Therefore 5-day BOD is taken as a standard reference because 70% organic content will be oxidized. So BOD is initial BOD minus final BOD into dilution factor. So the given question, they have given initial BOD is 5 milligram per liter, final is 4 milligram per liter and 1% dilution sample, right? So dilution sample they have given 1%. So 5 minus 4 into 100 by 1. So BOD at 5 days is 100 milligram per liter. So 100 milligram per liter is the answer for the given question. Okay, my dear students and my dear subscribers, thanks for watching this video. Please like, comment and share, and I think it is very helpful for all of you. And remaining portion, that is from the 50 to 100, I will bring very soon. Today only I will bring those questions. Please watch this video and subscribe our YouTube channel. See you there. Thank you and all. Thanks for watching this video.